Club local social that we're holding. We've obviously muted microphones, and you can ask questions in the chat, and we can hand those over to Gareth or to our featured clubs a bit later on. So for the benefit of those that haven't joined the socials before, these socials have been going on throughout lockdown. We started off with 3 clubs, with the Sarsens Club, with Portsmouth Semper and Essex Cornerstone Club, and it quickly blossomed, shall we say, into what we have today, which we have a collective of many new and young Mason clubs, light blues clubs, young Mason clubs, various different wonderful forms that we have. And the aim of the socials are for us to kind of build stronger bonds and share ideas and best practices between all of our clubs, and also to give the clubs that are in the spotlight, which we have this evening. We have 2 clubs, a chance to kind of shine and sell themselves and what they're all about and what they've been up to. And we've had some fantastic examples of that. Some really great things have been shared on these socials so far, things that, and I know that I've kind of taken away and spoken to my club about, and things that we could potentially look at. So we've made a few changes for this social. We've kind of opened it up more than what we have before. We have spread it far and wide. Even if your club isn't in the spotlight, you are allowed to join and listen. And we've got some great guests. We've got some great clubs this evening, so we'll move on to that. So this evening we are joined by West Kent Light Blues, and we're also joined by Northamptonshire and Huntingdonshire Light Blues. I think that's the correct pronunciation. I know Mitch made a hash of it this afternoon on the social media adverts that he made. That's unlike him. So we just want to say hello to them. Thank you for joining, and all the members of those clubs. Thank you this evening. We're looking forward to hearing from you shortly. But also to our guest speaker. So this evening we are joined by Gareth Jones, who's the 3rd Grand Principal, and also, Gareth, I might get this wrong, so forgive me. Are you the Provincial Grand Master of South Wales as well? I don't know if you're on mute or not. Sorry to put you on the spot. But anyway, if I'm wrong, you can correct me shortly.
You are right.
Sure. I'm right. Okay, thank you. So what we will start to do, just want to thank you, all the new clubs from joining. Thank you, Gareth, for spending some time with us this evening just to talk through. Gents, as we said, please use the chat to ask questions, because the Q&A is always a really rich session that we have at the end. So, that is a great opportunity. If you've got any questions for anything, you might not have them now, but as you listen to the other clubs and you listen to Gareth, you might get something. Please don't feel that any question is unanswerable or silly. We will get those answered for you. And if you can't hang on, we'll try to get those questions answered at the end. We'll either do an extra session, or you can drop off and we'll continue recording, and you can watch that recording at the end, because as Mitch said before, we'll post this up in the usual places. So okay, so we've got a fairly loose agenda with these socials, as we normally have. We try to finish about 9:15 if possible. Some have finished bang on time, some have carried on, but if don't feel like you need to carry on past 9:15, if you want to get back to your Sunday evenings, I'm sure there's plenty of other things you'd like to be doing as well. But please stay with us, because I'm sure we'll have some great questions to answer.
Can I just mention, we'd also like to welcome the Honourable Fraternity of Ancient Freemasons, the Women in Freemasonry, this week. Obviously, like Barry said, we're now open to all Freemasons, so we'd like to send a particular welcome to you guys, or you women that have joined us from the Honourable Fraternity. We spoke to Christine Chapman way early on in these socials, and it was so interesting. So we're very pleased to have you along.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and extend that welcome as well. So to kick off this evening, we're going to hand over to our first club, which is, I believe, is West Kent. Is that right, Mitch? We're going to West Kent first?
Yep.
Yep.
As
okay.
you see.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'll hand over to the guys at West Kent to talk about themselves, and yep, over to you, and then we'll move on to the next club.
Thank you very much. From the West Kent Light Blues. Good evening, brethren. I'm Carl Lawton. I am the assistant chairman of the West Kent Light Blues and current active comms officer. Let me start by saying thanks for inviting us to this today. It's a great thing to do during these strange and difficult times for the brethren to get together. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for putting this together. It is appreciated. The West Kent Light Blues are exactly that. We are a club run by Light Blues for the Light Blue members of our province. We operate under our own constitution with some provincial oversight, and that will vary depending on how much the province needs us to assist with them, as I'm sure you're all aware. Our membership consists of everything from entered apprentices to past masters. We don't file by age, so you can join our club regardless of your age. As long as you've not achieved provincial rank, you're more than welcome. It's free to join, and the only thing you have to do to join is fill in a simple membership form, just so you know we can tally your lodge with our records. Everyone's happy. All members of the West Kent Light Blues must be a subscribing member to a West Kent Lodge. That's the only real condition. You can be an associate member. So if you live in West Kent, but you happen to be a subscribing member of an East Kent Lodge or a London Lodge or over in Essex, you can still come and hang out with us, and it'll all be great. We run a combination of both Masonic and social activities. On the social side, during normal times I'm aware we're under exceptional circumstances at the moment. We have a monthly breakfast club, which is normally very well attended, and that's a good way just to speak to the members casually, have a nice breakfast, get it out early so that we've still got the rest of the weekend ahead of us. There's our annual chairman's lunch, which is normally in a nice swanky Italian somewhere, but that's casual wives, partners, and kids are all, well, these tend to be a bit more excitable, so the partners and children tend not to come to these, but they're always good fun. Our spectacular summer party is always a winner. We have a big barbecue, lots of drinking, lots of disco, great fun. And then we enjoy some clay pigeon shooting with West Kent Shooting Lodge, the Lodge of Sincerity, 6868. So that takes care of some of the social activities. There's other bits and bobs as well. Masonically, we run our own touring gavel for the club. This touring gavel, you don't have to bid for it. It's just a opportunity for newer brethren, and we do tend to say newer brethren as opposed to younger brethren, to come together, and we encourage them to visit other lodges, and that engages with our fellowship. We've held a few LOIs at special requests. These tend to take place up the Duke of Kent home in Chislehurst, which is part of the RMBI. We hold ours there. We find it helpful for some of our younger members who perhaps don't want to sort of take their first steps into performing ritual in front of their own lodge. They can come do the working tools with us. It also helps with the Masonic members of the home as well. They find that they really do miss the Masonic contact, and if we can give them a little bit of that, then that's all the better for us. We started to put together a few sort of hints and tips videos. We've got a YouTube channel. There's a few bits and bobs on there, but that will expand as time goes on. The structure of the club, we have a president who is the West Kent Deputy Provincial Grand Master, the very worshipful Mark Isles Thomas. He's a lovely chap. He sits there and acts as a conduit from the club to the province and the province to the club. Our vice president is worshipful brother Paul Holmes. He has a slightly more hands-on active role. And then we boil down to the committee, which consists of the chairman, worshipful brother Mark James, who is here with us today. Mark, thank you very much. And our secretary, Liam Turner's here. Thank you, chaps, for turning up. And then it's a standard committee structure from that point. We have membership, events team, and you know, a couple of sort of advisory guys on the panel, and that is essentially the West Kent Light Blues.
Oh, great, thank you. Did you guys have any plans during lockdown? Did you guys manage to get out and do anything, or?
We haven't. I mean, we haven't been out and about. We've held a few online lectures. We are very fortunate in West Kent to have the and East Kent as well, I'm sure, have the prestigious Cornwallis lecture circuit, which is it's kind of up there with the Prestonian. Maybe not quite is the same level as the Prestonian lectures, but it's a very prestigious thing to do. And we've been running a few of these lectures again through Tony Harvey, who I'm sure most of you are aware of. Does a lot of presentations. He's a former Cornwallis lecturer. He's presented that for us. So we've been doing a few bits and bobs, but we haven't quite managed to get out there and physically meet as of yet.
Sure. Okay. And so, just out of interest for me, what's it like with the East Kent Light Blues? Are they? Is it a competitive thing? Do you guys have like joint socials or anything like that?
We haven't at the moment. Both of our clubs are actually fairly new. I know East Kent have just done a really good job of turning their club around and rebranding and getting that back on the tracks, and they've done a really good job. They have offered us to go and see them, and we've reciprocated. We've just not been able to find the time to actually make that happen. So, I mean, there's always going to be that slight friendly banter, but I wouldn't consider it a rivalry.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. So if there's any questions for Carl, please put them in the chat. We can pick them up now, or we can pick them up later. But if not, we'll head over to Northants Light Blues. I think that's Dan we're speaking to. Is that all right?
Good evening, everybody.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I'm going to attempt to share the screen if I can, if you don't mind.
No, go for it.
And I'm going to attempt for it not to be death by PowerPoint for you all. Hopefully you'll all stay awake through it. So good evening, everybody, and welcome from the Northampton Hunts New and Young Masons Club. Just going to quickly run through a few things with you, a little bit of our history, a little bit about what we've been doing, some things that have worked for us. So some quick facts about the club. We were founded on the 17th of March 2019. So in terms of you guys, we're relatively new to the New Young Masons Club circuit, if you like. We've been created to provide a forum to help new and young Masons and their families to meet and enjoy social events and build friendships. We do have a membership fee, which is a £5 joining fee. This was originally going to be a £5 annual fee. However, our provincial grandmaster asked for us to scrap it completely. But we felt that by having some sort of token membership fee, it sort of made it that we weren't just giving everybody membership. The people that were actually registering and paying their £5 were people that wanted to be a part of the club and get involved, etc. Your membership gets you the famous blue hanky. Well, it's famous in Northamptonshire and Huntingdonshire at least. And you then also get membership to, obviously you get invited to all the events we're doing and things like that. The events, they're not just for light blues. We're quite happy for dark blues and non-Masons to join. But if you are a member, you will get some sort of discounted fee. If there's a ticket fee, then you'd get some sort of discount on that based on you being a membership, just so that also keeps people obviously becoming members rather than saying, well, I'm not getting anything out of it. Like the last guys, we don't have an age limit, and you're eligible for membership from the day that you're initiated up until the day that you receive your provincial honours. And our current membership stands at 275 members. This is just a quick picture showing the guys with their hankies on. Some of the guys, I think this was number 100th member, so we tried to make a bit of a thing about it, and that's our assistant provincial grandmaster who is presenting him with his light blue hanky. So I'm just going to quickly run through the structure of our club. We've got a 6-strong committee, and we have a bit of a rule where the treasurer and the secretary will do no longer than 2 years in the role. The idea is the vice chairman does a year, he then becomes chairman. With us being a new club, I have done 2 years as chairman, but I will step down in March, and hopefully it will then carry on as we hope for years to come. But we do this to try and keep young blood coming in through the committee and keeping the ideas nice and fresh, etc. We're also supported very well by our provincial team in general, but our PGM is the patron of the club. Our assistant grandmaster is assistant provincial grandmaster, sorry, is the president, and our provincial mentor is our vice president. These positions stay with those roles. So, for instance, when our PGM changes, then the new PGM will become the patron, etc. Now, just before I go on to the next slide, I'll just give you a brief bit of history. Although we are new to this, actually the province did try to start a New Young Masons Club back in around about 2011, 2012, and it sort of was all right, but it didn't really take off. 2 reasons: there wasn't much structure in place. It was a Facebook group where people sort of posted who fancies a curry, etc., etc. But the main reason it failed was geographical reasons. Now, we are only a small province in terms of some of the provinces. I think you probably won't drive any further than sort of 60 miles across the province. But when we were trying to organise curry nights in Northampton to get all the guys from around the province to come, etc., it just didn't work. So we've now structured our club slightly different. And this, when I said to Mitch and Barry about you calling us the Light Blues and we're actually the New Young Masons Club, that's because what we have is we then have 9 light blue clubs within our province. So these light blue clubs tend to be associated with a centre or a group of centres. For instance, like Ketcham and Frapston, that's 2 centres that have come together because they're in pretty close area of each other. So these guys have their own individual sort of events committees, if you like, and they will also have a liaison officer, which tends to be a group officer. I'm not sure if you guys have group officers, but here we have group officers, which are generally they're sort of Grand Lodge officers that are put in charge of that certain area to report back to the province. So they are now working very closely with our individual light blues clubs as well. So the role of the New Young Masons Club is to act as the overall sort of provincial New Young Masons Club, and we're there to assist the local light blues clubs with the administration arm. So we've got the secretaries, we've got the treasurers, things like that. We run the sort of communications arm, if you like, of the business, and we're also there if they have any issues or anything, they can come and speak to us, and we provide that link between the light blues clubs and the provincial executive. We also aim to hold 4 to 5 main events a year that would try and bring the whole province together the best it can. Whereas the roles of the light blues clubs, they are there to provide regular localised events and to support their members more on a local level, and also keep the area vibrant in the area. And even in such a small province, different areas have different ways of doing things, and that sort of works by having these light blue clubs. We spent our first year really building the foundations of the club and getting the light blue clubs up and running. In March, I sat there on the 19th of March, I think it was, and told everybody how we were going to concentrate hugely on events and communications this year, and then on the 24th of March we was all told to stay in. So that sort of stopped me in my stead a little bit. However, we have had, these are previous events, we tried to go to the June communications meeting down at Grand Lodge and try and take a crowd of us. Again, this didn't happen this year, but I think we had somewhere in the region of 40 booked in to go to that. We were going to hold a teddy bears picnic this summer in aid of the TLC appeal. We did a Santa's train trip at Christmas, and I think we're going to aim to try and do that again this Christmas, dependent on where we are in the world. And we tried to do some sort of lodge visits. We've got quite a lot of special interest lodges within the province that we'll try and take a gang to. We'll try and support some of our members if they've got a bit of a milestone meeting happening. For instance, at my installation in January, I had over 93 turn up, and there was about 30 of the light blues from the province turned up, which was great that they came to support me, and we try and do that for all the guys. The light blues clubs, things that they've been doing event-wise and things that tend to work for them. They've been having pool nights, get-togethers. Curry night seems to be a favourite, and there's quite a few of them popping up around the province. Quiz nights, some family picnics and barbecues have been happening, and some general just pub meets, brewery tours and things like that. We try to, it's not exactly a written rule, the events are to we try and spread the events relatively equal between Masonic events and events for us as Masons. But we really want to see lots of events for families, for the children, and also for non-Masons as well. We feel, although we're not here to recruit, it's a great way to bring friends that are possibly thinking about Freemasonry just into the outskirts of it and see what sort of the guys are like and things like that, and then hopefully they'll perhaps take the next step and go forward into becoming members of the province. Like I say, communications was a key thing for us. So we have our website. Our website is also an online registration, which we introduced, and we've found that huge as far as our membership numbers. We found previous to that, we were trying to get forms filled in, and the forms were being handed out at lodges and being put into cases and staying in there till the next month, and they weren't really going anywhere. As soon as we did the online membership, the membership numbers sort of shot up quite quickly. We have a pretty good social media presence with Facebook. Our Facebook group is locked. Some of the local light blues clubs also have their own Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups and what have you. And then we have Twitter and Instagram, which is open and sort of more just advertising what a great bunch of people new young Masons are to the rest of the world. But we won't put anything on about the events as such on there, only after we've had them. Lodge ambassadors. So we've currently got a program where we're trying to get lodge ambassadors for the light blues within all the 94 lodges in the province. These guys, their role, if you like, is to obviously they'll stand up in the risings and discuss any business that we've been up to, any events we've got going on. They will also be one of the first people that would meet the new guys that are coming in and have a discussion with them. We've had these cards printed, which we found have been really successful, with the QR code that takes you straight onto the website to get your membership. And they've also, they get their ideas and they go back to their local light blues committee and say, look, our lodge would really like to see this happen, etc., etc. So those guys have been really good for the club and seem to work well. We have a bi-monthly newsletter that goes out, and just letting people know what's going on and keeping people in the fold. like I said, we have great support from our provincial team anyway. So we have a quarterly magazine that goes out, and we always get a minimum of a 2-page spread in there, depending what we've been up to and how much we've got to put in there. So what have we been doing through lockdown? Like I said, I made a pretty big statement saying we were going to really hit it hard this year with events and what have you, and then lockdown hit. But we reacted to it rather quickly, and we've been having many virtual events going on, including we had a Grand National Sweepstake, which was fantastic. It was obviously run on ITV, but the sort of banter over Facebook between everybody while the race was going on and stuff was fantastic. We had a kids colouring competition where the kids could draw a picture of Big Ted and win a prize. We had the Guess the Baby Mason, which included basically our whole provincial team, right the way from the provincial grandmaster and all the exec, all the way down, and pictures of them as babies, and you had to guess which one was which. We did a virtual Easter egg hunt where we gave clues where the eggs might be around the world, and the kids filled it in. Some of you may have seen this. I know some guys from outside of the province got involved in this. So we wanted to hold a Euros 2020 event previously, and we were going to sort of go around to the various centres and watch the England games, etc. And then obviously that got put in hold. Our secretary who's with us this evening, Ruben, came up with this idea where we could still hold a virtual one by the result being decided by the rolling of a dice. And he kept that going. He put a lot of hard work into it, and he kept it going through the exact dates of what the matches would have been. We had a phenomenal amount of people join in with that. I think we sold something like 9 sheets worth of teams or something. And the prizes we decided, because it was obviously through lockdown, the prizes were just eat vouchers, so you could treat the family to a takeaway. So that was been a huge success for us. Obviously, the same as probably all the clubs, we've had various Zoom meetings. Again, we did these based in the areas, so we had all the local light blues clubs doing them, and then we had the big one for everybody to join in at the end, and we had over 40 of the members turn up for that, including the provincial grandmaster, and the assistant provincial grandmaster came and joined us for that, and that worked really well. And off the back of that, we some questions were starting to fly across through the Zoom, and people interested in asking the PGM, etc. questions. So after that, the exec approached us and said, how about we do an audience with the provincial executive, which we did, and we did it that you sent your questions in, and then if you had a question, you was obviously involved in it, but we recorded it, and I think you'll be able to find it if anybody ever wanted to watch it, find it on YouTube, but we recorded it so that the whole province could see it. But what was really great about this was the amount of correspondence we got from the Dark Blues saying, wow, you know, there's stuff that came up there that we didn't know. You know, we've been Masons for years and years and we didn't know that. And it worked really well. And we're hoping even after lockdown, we can carry on those because they seem to work really well. We've had virtual race nights as well, which have been a good success. And last week, our Northampton Light Blues Club, they did a virtual barbecue where everybody had their own barbecues in their gardens, and we just shared the photos over Facebook and videos and stuff. And there's the secretary of the Northampton Light Blues, which I'm not sure he's a real man, but according to his apron, he is. Something else we got involved in through lockdown was we got involved in a brother-to-brother scheme, which allowed any of our vulnerable brethren throughout the province to get in contact with us, and we did shopping for them, took them to the doctors, we did sort their medication out and got that delivered for them, and that went on all the way through lockdown. And in fact, we're still sort of looking after a couple of them at the moment that still don't feel that they want to be going out. But we also did, we've got a a home in the province, which is a part of the Masonic Housing Association, and it's called Palmer Court, and it's a sheltered accommodation for both Masons and non-Masons, but it is run by the province, and we, with them, managed to get a local restaurant to provide meals twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, for I think it was 8 weeks we did it for, and we ended up delivering over 400 meals, sorry, to those guys over that time, and that went down really well with those guys. They really appreciated it, and I don't know if any of the other clubs have ever sort of come across this, but one sort of thing that we've sort of come across is a little bit from, you know, at the beginning, dark blue saying, why do we need a light blues club? We never had a light blues club when I was a light blue, and blah, blah. This proved why we needed a light blues club, and this was massive. And the amount of dark blues that I'd had that had originally said to me, I don't see what the point of it is, that then come back and really saw what the worth of us and the club was amazing after that.
Brilliant.
So,
Dan, unfortunately, we need to move on to our next agenda item. But what we'll do, if we can get you back to finish,
anyway.
if we can get back to finish the presentation on our extra meeting, we'll put that on the Facebook and the YouTube channel if that's okay.
Yeah, that's it finished anyway.
Perfect.
So that's us done. All right.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for that. Yeah, just shout out to Ruben for the virtual Euros. I was part of that, and it was brilliantly run, a labour of love, and yeah, you done really well there. So thank you. And guess the baby Mason. I think that's something that I'm definitely going to take back to my province, see if we can get involved in that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Gareth now. And Gareth, it's I'm sorry Dan's taken up all your time. I'll have a word with him afterwards. So yeah, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Barry. I'm going to have to watch what I say this evening, not just because you're recording the session, but because I noticed from the attendees list that at least 2 of my colleague PGMs are here, so they're going to know if I'm trying to pull the wool over your eyes. I'm delighted to see so many clubs represented here this evening. That's a really positive step. And indeed, great to see a number of lady Freemasons who've joined us as well this evening. Relationships between UGLE and lady Freemasons have just taken off really over the last few years, and normalizing that relationship, you know, between men Freemasons and lady Freemasons has been one of the most positive things I think we've done for a number of years. A little bit of background about me, not too much, I assure you, but just to say I was initiated in 1984 and exalted into the Royal Arch in 1986. My background then, before I became a ruler, was as a director of ceremonies. So I was a DC of my province for a number of years. And during that time, apart from the crafts and the Royal Arch, I was pleased to join, and I'm still a member of, Mark Masonry, Royal Arch Mariners, the Ancient and Accepted Rite, and Royal and Select Masters. So I have a relatively sort of broad range of Masonic experience. I've been Provincial Grand Master of South Wales since 2013. South Wales is a reasonably sizable province with 161 lodges, around 5,500 members. And in that role, I'm also the president of the Colonnade Club, which is the South Wales New and Young Masons Club. And that's one of the real joys of my role as PGM. I've been the 3rd Grand Principal of Supreme Grand Chapter now since 2016. I never was, and now clearly never will be, Grand Superintendent of my province, but was asked to take on the role of 3rd Grand Principal when my predecessor, David Kenneth Williamson, retired from that role in 2016. I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we all face as PGMs, and then I'll talk a bit about my role as third Grand Principal. But I then want to get on to new and young Masons clubs, and the reason for that will become obvious. Well, what are the challenges that we all face? I suppose anybody, if you asked them what our principal challenges were, they'd probably say they're around membership. And I don't agree with that. I don't think our challenge is membership at all. I completely recognize that we've lost very significant numbers of Freemasons, something like 100+ thousand over the last 20-25 years. But my view of that is that is a symptom of the real problems rather than the problem itself. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that the problems themselves, in my view, are around quality and not numbers, quality, not quantity. Yes, there are some societal changes that have given us some challenges with regard to membership, but those are challenges that we can relatively easily meet. And like a number of my colleague PGMs, I've been encouraging my lodges to do some little things, just to make adjustments so that people can attend when their busy lives are mitigating against that. Simple things like starting earlier, consider different ways of celebrating festive boards, cutting down on long speeches, cutting down on things like long 3, 4, 5-course dinners late at night, and making changes and adjustments which will allow particularly younger men to come along to our meetings. But quality, for me, is what will make a difference in the long run to our membership. Yes, quality of ritual is important so that our candidates enjoy and find meaningful our ceremonies. But when I talk about quality, I'm talking about much more than that. I'm talking about quality of engagement with local communities. I'm talking about quality of engagement with prospective members, quality of how we look after people once they've joined our fraternity so that they're not just left to fend for themselves, quality with regard to how we conduct our ceremonies, how we behave in our ceremonies and how we behave in our after proceedings and in ancillary meetings. Quality of how we keep people's interest or indeed regain it if it's lost. And absolutely crucially, quality of Masonic halls, the offering that we give to people when they join our fraternity. None of you on this call this evening would take your partners to facilities or accommodation that you considered to be substandard. But I'm afraid in Masonry, we suffer from what I call the it'll do culture. You know, poor quality changing rooms. Oh, it'll do for us. Poor quality facilities, toilets in our halls, poor quality meals, poor quality accommodation. And the number of times I've heard people say, well, it'll do for us, doesn't bear thinking about. The fact is it won't do, brethren. It won't do because while we put up with substandard quality in everything that we do, whether it be behavior, whether it be ritual, whether it be the accommodation that we offer to people, while we put up with that and while we pander to this it'll do culture, we will never be able to attract sufficient numbers to our wonderful organization to make it sustainable in the very long term. So those are some of the challenges we face as provincial grandmasters and as leaders within our province. You know, those are the challenges, I believe, that we face to try and address that symptom, that underlying symptom, which has shown itself to be reduced numbers over many years. As third Grand Principal, well, there are a number of things that automatically come with that role. Membership of the Grand Masters Council, membership of the Cabinet, membership of the Grand Ranks Committee, which decides on Grand Ranks every year, and various rulers' meetings which deal with a variety of issues. One of the great joys of being third Grand Principal is the amount of visiting that one is able to do around the provinces and indeed to overseas districts and inspectorates. And I've had the enormous pleasure of so far installing 3 new Grand Superintendents in their provinces since I took on that role. But one of the most enjoyable and pleasurable roles I was asked to take on as third Grand Principal was in 2016, when the Programme Master asked me if I would take on responsibility for being the principal UGLE liaison point with new and young Masons clubs. At that stage, there were probably only high teens, early 20s of new and young Masons clubs. So it was a relatively easy job to do. And really the role revolved very much around the natural rhythm associated with the annual conference that I know many of you here have attended. There are now 45 new and young Masons clubs who are formal members of the New and Young Masons Club fraternity. And it's quite a challenge to act in that sort of liaison role between UGLE and the clubs as a whole across actually not just England and Wales now, because we have a number of clubs in districts overseas. The New and Young Masons clubs are very different from the university scheme. And that sounds a fairly obvious thing to say, but the difference that I want to highlight is this particular one. The university scheme was a creation of UGLE. It was very much a top-down organization which was created and controlled and run by UGLE. Whereas New and Young Masons clubs are much more of a bottom-up creation, with UGLE not really providing any sort of overarching control with regard to what you do. New and Young Masons clubs are basically about having fun, having a fun network of people who are like-minded, a community of practice, if you like, of like-minded people who can enjoy the social and Masonic elements of their lives. So it's now a very large community, and I've been arguing for some time that it needs better coordination, and it simply needs better coordination so that it can liaise better with UGLE and Supreme Grand Chapter, which I will, I hope, continue to act as the principal point of contact. Tonight is a great example to further build on the sort of social network that New and Young Masons clubs have. And I know many of you know too, that there is some work going on with regard to the possibility of establishing a a New and Young Masons Club's committee, which it strikes me that this forum that we're enjoying and this evening would be an excellent contributor to, with regard to events and the social side of things. So, brethren, I hope that's given you a little flavour. I've spoken almost as long as Dan now, so I will stop and take any questions that you may have, or any comments.
Gareth, that's great, thank you. And I think Matty, you're going to handle the Q&A. All right.
What I was thinking, Gareth, if it's at all possible, would you mind just giving us a little bit of history with your masonry before you became provincial Grand Master and the provincial Grand Director of Ceremonies, and tell us maybe a little bit why you got into Freemasonry, how you got into Freemasonry, and just a little background with you around that time, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah. The lodge in which I was initiated, my mother lodge, where I'm still a member, is called Harlequins Lodge number 5793 in Cardiff. Harlequins Lodge is a schools lodge. It's the lodge associated with Cardiff High School. And well, I was 25, so in 1982, I was playing rugby for the Cardiff High School Old Boys, the school's old boys team, and there were a number of members of that club who were members of the lodge as well. And so I, together with my brother, approached a number of them, and because in those days, you know, that was the way it happened. You had to approach somebody to ask to become a member. So I joined then in 1984. I spent a number of years then working in London. So I was a member of a lodge in East Kent after that, and but retained my membership in South Wales, and then moved back to Wales for work purposes. Was appointed Provincial Grand Sword Bearer in 1999, and then Provincial Grand Director of Ceremonies in 2004, which I did for 3 years. Then became an Assistant PGM, then Deputy PGM, and finally Provincial Grand Master in 2013.
That's great. And so, in terms of the lodge, I'm sorry, what was the lodge that your mother lodge, Gareth? What was that called again, please?
Harlequins.
Harlequins. So, do you still hold office, or any kind of office in there, or are you too busy because you've probably got a lot going on?
I don't hold an office there anymore, though they do regularly call on me to deliver various bits of ritual. And, you know, as you can imagine, the committee and the past masters do tend to you know, seek my advice on things if they don't always take it, actually, but they often seek it.
And in terms of UGLE, and what kind of contributions have you led or initiatives you've kind of run in terms of Grand Lodge?
Well, if you set aside my role as third Grand Principal, in Grand Lodge, I was a member, founder member of the Membership Focus Group, which was established in 2013 to look at this whole question of membership. You know, what were the issues we should address to try and halt the decline in membership that had really sort of crept up on us, and very little had been done about it. That work was then passed on to the Improvement Delivery Group, which David Wootton chaired, and I was the deputy chair, vice chair of that committee of the IDG. So, you know, I was involved in a lot of that. I chaired a group on governance of masonry for some time, which was all part of the work that the IDG was doing. And of course, I got heavily involved in the development of Pathway when it was being drafted, in particular with regard to the elements of Pathway that are associated with the Royal Arch.
Yeah, yeah. That was another thing I was going to ask, actually, because I knew that your contribution to Pathway was quite large to begin with. So with everything that you're doing in terms of as a provincial Grand Master in South Wales, what would you say are your three highlights of your PGM role, but also prior to that, three highlights going up to your PGM role?
Three highlights.
Yes.
Well, anybody that says that their initiation into Freemasonry is not a highlight, it must have been pretty blown away on the night and unable to take much of it in. Same, I think, with regard to one's installation into the chair. I mean, I was first in the chair of my mother lodge in 1993. I've subsequently done 3 further chairs in 3 different lodges. And being installed into the chair of any lodge is a wonderful experience, which I know some of you on the call may not have had, but I absolutely encourage you to stick with it until that point, because it's a wonderful experience. And I've mentioned it already. Being asked to be the president of the New and Young Masons Club I'm president of quite a lot of things, but being president of the New and Young Masons Club is actually a great joy, and I was in it from the start. In South Wales, we have created a Royal Arts chapter associated with the with the New and Young Masons Club, and I was the first principal of that. So I've been heavily involved in new Masons, young Masons. I prefer the word new, to be honest, because false barriers with regard to age, I think, are unhelpful. But those are the sort of highlights, I guess. Yeah. And then of course, being installed as provincial Grand Master is a wonderful thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I'm sure you would agree, Gareth, in terms of the light blues and Union Mason clubs and the white table clubs, everything else that we have going on, that really add a value and support and assist provinces so well. I think the idea that it's all grassroots and it's all pretty much come for nothing other than enthusiasm and motivation. How do you instill that at a provincial level for not just club members, but for your members in your province as well?
I mean, you can't force it. I've been very clear throughout my career and throughout my Masonic journey that leadership is all about creating an environment within which things can happen. And as far as New and Young Masons clubs are concerned, I don't run them. I don't get involved on a day-to-day basis. I don't take decisions with regard to the clubs at all. They have an excellent chairman and a committee, and they're perfectly capable of doing that themselves. What I do is demonstrate that province is there to support. That we have a provincial Grand Secretary who's a past chairman of the New and Young Masons Club in South Wales, and he and his office are there to provide any help and assistance that the club wants. I turn up at whatever I'm invited to, really. If I'm invited to an annual event or whatever, then I try and make time. I think making time for those events is extremely important, and perhaps far more important perhaps than being there to foist one's own views or decisions upon things.
Yeah, and in terms of longevity, maybe we'll talk about South Wales in terms of longevity and membership and I guess health more than anything else, and strength in your province in terms of healthy lodges and everything else as such.
Yeah.
Have you got any provincial run initiatives to help that succeed?
Yeah, I mean, we do. I have an excellent provincial ground membership officer who runs a team of brethren across the province who are responsible for looking after all expressions of interest that come into us via, you know, the website and various other social media platforms. Actually, he was telling me this week that since lockdown, he now has an additional 82 gentlemen who have not only expressed an interest, but are at the point of being allocated to lodges across the province. So, you know, that works very well. We have an assistant provincial ground master who is specifically responsible for looking after what we call weaker lodges. So in South Wales, that equates to lodges with 20 or fewer members. And his responsibility is to work with the membership officer to do what we can to help those lodges. Inevitably, we will lose some. We have lost some, but we've also consecrated. I've had the pleasure of consecrating 3 lodges as well, and you know, that's all part of the natural life cycle of lodges. You know, we will lose some, and we will, you know, some more will be born. I'm delighted to say that we've now consecrated the Welsh Rugby Club's lodge, which is looking forward to winning the inaugural Wales v England rugby match next year. Despite the fact that I've found my boots and offered to play number 6 for the team, they've not taken me up on that offer.
Well, yeah, I mean, substitute's always good as well.
I'm sure you've still got it, Gareth, as well.
Get me to run the line.
But what we'll do now, Gareth, if you don't mind, we'll just hold on for a couple of minutes. Can we get Tony, the Secretary of Cambridgeshire Light Blues, just to say a warm welcome to both the clubs and Gareth, if you don't mind?
Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear and see me. Thank you, Gareth, for that wonderful talk. Yeah, it's a great privilege to be able to welcome in the new clubs and say thank you on behalf of everybody else. On behalf of all of the wonderful provinces that make up the New and Young Masons Intersocial Club this evening. So I take great pleasure in welcoming both the clubs, Northamptonshire and Huntingdon New and Young Masons Club and West Kent. Welcome.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tony. That's perfect. Thank you. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass over to Mitch, because what we do slightly over 9 o'clock. We tend to do a 9 o'clock toast, just where everyone raises their glasses and look like we're all enjoying ourselves. So what we'll do afterwards is we're going to have a Q&A with Gareth. We're going to carry the Q&A on. So any question, guys, just stick them in the chat. I know we've got a few to get through, but yeah, stick them in the chat. Cheers, guys.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matty. I'll get Alan. Alan, are you primed?
Ready.
So, Alan Coleman, where are you?
One job, Alan. Come on, you can do it.
Great. Okay, right, I'll do it. Right, after 3. If you just raise your,
Ready to go.
after 3, raise your glasses. 1, 2, 3.
Got it.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you, Matty.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Cheers, guys. So, questions. We've got, the first one's from me. And mine is, what encouraged you to start your Masonic life / career? Was there something that got you involved, like family or history or anything such as that?
My father wasn't a Mason, and neither was my grandfather. I subsequently found out that my great-grandfather was a member of a lodge in South Wales, but I didn't know that at the time. So it wasn't a family issue at all. It was much more about people that I knew within my rugby club, whom I liked, whom I admired, people whom I thought, well, if they're enjoying Freemasonry, then I probably will too. I knew nothing about the charitable side of things. I knew nothing about the developmental aspects of Freemasonry. It was, I guess, much more a social thing for me at the outset. But of course, once you join, you then learn that Freemasonry is much more than that. It's really a way of life. It has become more of a family thing for me since my father-in-law joined Freemasonry after I did, and last year my son was initiated into a lodge in London. So while it wasn't a family thing at the outset, my wife who's here somewhere, will tell you it's become a pretty important and significant element of our lives, really, certainly for the last 7 or 8 years, and I hope it will be for many years to come.
Great. So you're having growing numbers in your family barbecues at Masons now. They're slowly creeping up.
Yeah, quite.
We have David Little from the Sartons Club. Would you mind reading your question out, please, David?
Certainly. Good evening, Gareth. It's just a quick one that you've sort of partly answered, I think, already. But it was now that we have a large majority of provinces that already have new and young Masons clubs, and they're all slightly different joining criteria and structures and gender, etc. In your opinion, how do you see the NYMC structure working, and how do you yourself, stroke Grand Lodge, think you can link in and work with that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say, David, is that all clubs have slightly different constitutions, and I see no difficulty with that at all. There is no necessarily a one-size-fits-all solution which should be applied to every club. It's really what suits the province or the district or area within a province as to how it wishes to run itself. I think, at the moment, New and Young Masons clubs, the 45, who are formally who have formally established themselves, have no structure whatsoever, and so when it comes to liaison between UGLE and the clubs, it is a nigh on an impossibility, and we sort of get around it for things like annual conferences by liaising with the whoever the organizer of the conference is, plus of course Mitch, who's been doing a sterling job in London from the past chairman of the Connaught Club to try and sort of hold things together. He can't continue to do that because we've got far too many clubs now, and it seems to me that establishing a committee which would not be in the least about control, it would not be in the least about driving some sort of one-size-fits-all agenda. It would simply be about trying to help clubs to learn from each other and to up the enjoyment. So, I think, as I said earlier, tonight's event is a great example, really. And if, all New and Young Masons clubs had linked into tonight, it would have been a great social experience. I just think that creating that point of contact, if you like, which the New and Young Masons clubs can then have easier access to UGLE without having to be done on a sort of piecemeal basis would be a positive thing. But hey, UGLE is not trying to drive that agenda. It's entirely a matter for the clubs themselves to decide whether or not they want that level of coordination.
Brilliant, thank you.
That's great, Gareth. And what would be the benefit of being kind of intertwined with UGLE?
Well, there are always bits of help and support that you might need. Let me give you 2 examples. First example, conferences, get-togethers, workshops, whatever it may be. Providing high-quality speakers from the very top of UGLE is something that we've been able to do, and I think would be able to be done much easier if we had very clear lines of communication between the clubs as an entity and me as part of as the principal liaison point in UGLE. Second example is a slightly sensitive one, but there was a time when there were quite a few provinces that were not being strongly encouraged to establish a new and young Masons club. There were some provinces that did not provide the sort of support and advice and help that we might have expected that they should for their local new and young Masons clubs. There were some provinces that tried to dissuade new and young Masons club members from attending annual conferences. All of those were unhelpful to the whole success of this wonderful community that we are building across the Constitution. And the only way that could be fixed was by conversations having to be had with at the highest level with the relevant provincial Grand Masters concerned, and that's what happened.
That's great, thank you. What we'll probably do is we'll do one more question, Gareth. But I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I'm sure you're a very busy man, but what we tend to do when we've got leftover questions is we'll just do an extra. So we'll just, if it's possible, maybe if we can get on at a convenient time with all of us and maybe just do an extra 20-30 minutes to finish off the questions.
Sure.
At some point in the future. Because obviously we finish at 9:50 and we're quite rigid on that. We don't want to take up everyone's evening.
I mean, I don't know about you, but quite a few people have said to me, recently, well, it must be strange not having much to do. I don't know what planet they're coming from, really. I've never been so.
I can relate to that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip Barry's. I'm going to go to Gav Jones, please, if you don't mind, of Portray Club.
Good evening, brethren. Well, firstly, thanks for everyone's input tonight. It's been really interesting. So, it's my question to Gareth. Do you see kind of the new and young Masons clubs, the light blues, being pivotal to the membership pathway? So I know in Derbyshire we've been asked to help support and retain new members, but I just want to see what your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thanks, Gav. It's a very good question. And I think I said earlier that, the establishment, the development of new and young Masons clubs has always principally been about, and perhaps always should be about, enjoyment and making sure that people, have communities of like-minded individuals within their provinces that they can interact with. They can have both social and Masonic occasions together. But it is undoubtedly true that that leads to a contribution, certainly to retention, because if people enjoy their masonry, they're going to stay. But it also leads to a contribution to the attraction of new members too, because I'm well aware that clubs usually set up and establish community social evenings where they invite friends, families along, and what better opportunity to try and show somebody what a wonderful organization Freemasonry is, and therefore to provide a bit of a platform for attracting new members as well. So yeah, I think it does have a role to play in terms of retention and attraction. Gav, your provincial Grand Master, Steve Varley is at the moment pivotal in terms of the further development of the pathway, as you probably know, and engaging new and young Masons clubs and getting them to realize what a contribution they can make, I think will be very important.
Great, thank you, Gareth. Thank you for that question, and thank you, Gareth, for answering it. I think we're gonna tie it up about now, but just on behalf of myself, I'd like just to thank our two clubs that have come in today. Obviously, I mean, the real importance of these socials is to spotlight these light blues clubs and Union Mason clubs and give everyone a voice and make sure that they're heard as well, because the things that you guys do and we all do is incredibly important, and it that motivation and enthusiasm is crucially important, and it's and it says it with all the results that we're having at the minute, even particular in lockdown as well. It's important stuff. So thank you guys. On behalf of me, thank you, Gareth. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us a talk. It's been highly appreciated. And for all the provincial exec that were come on and support their clubs tonight, thank you so much for being on as well. It's I'm sure the clubs would appreciate you guys being on and supporting. It's great. I'll hand it back to Mitch, but thanks, guys.
Pleasure.
Great. Thank you, everybody, and appreciate it. Do check out our Facebook page. That's where you'll find the links to this tonight's video, and also to our YouTube channel, where you can subscribe and follow all the latest videos there as well. But do check in. We are now going to 3 weeks between socials. So the next one will be on the 30th of August, right at the end of the month. As it says here. So we look forward to welcoming you then. We'll obviously let you know who's joining the community and who our guests will be in due course. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your summer, and we will see you on the 30th of August. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Thank you. And thank you to Gareth.
Good night, everyone.
Take care.